as Naomi Wolf said, once you give political leaders emergency powers, they'll never relinquish them. They're never going to give them up. This was one of the most powerful 5 minutes of TV I've seen in a year. I want you to hear some more of Naomi Wolf. Naomi Wolf, again, a feminist. You and I probably wouldn't agree with 99% of her ideology. But boy, do I agree with her on this. Here's cut number 4. This was feminist and former Al Gore, Bill Clinton advisor Naomi Wolf on with Tucker Carlson last night on Fox News Channel.
I'm in touch with many patriots from all backgrounds and all walks of life who are horrified. I interviewed, for instance, Moms for Liberty, a group of conservative moms in Florida who are mobilizing to try to get schools open. They're so worried about what's happening to their kids. And I talked to Mom Jen Say, a famous gymnast and activist in San Francisco on the left, who's also a mom who's horrified. I've interviewed doctors. I've interviewed, ordinary people, restaurant owners from all walks of life who are absolutely unable to even articulate their fear and horror, recognizing that the state has now crushed businesses, kept us from gathering in free assembly to worship, as the First Amendment provides, is invading our bodies, as you mentioned, which is a violation of the Fourth Amendment, is restricting movement, fining us here in New York State. I could be fined $15,000 a day if I gather people, more than 10 or 25 people, depending on where in New York State I live, which is a complete violation of the First Amendment. I mean, the violations go on and on and on. I've talked to restaurant owners who are looking at a sector in which tens of thousands of small businesses have been crushed. And why were they crushed? Not because a pandemic forced them to. There is no real science underlying a lot of these closures. It's because autocratic tyrants at the state and now the national level are creating a kind of merger of corporate power and government power, which is really characteristic of Italian fascism in the 1920s. And they're using that to engage in kind of emergency orders that simply strip us of our rights to property, rights to assembly, rights to worship, and all of the rights that our Constitution guarantees.
Wow. I mean, it's been challenging for me. You have a national radio show. I can go by my experience in where I live in Florida. I saw a headline yesterday. CUOMO is going to allow movie theaters in New York to open next month. Now, I'm seeing this headline. I've been going to the movie theater for a year. They didn't close the movie theaters in Florida. They're at limited capacity. You spread out. They social distance. You can't, they're not selling blocks of seats right next to each other, but you can go. I've never not been able to go to the movies. I'm hearing about restaurants. Oh, they're going to maybe allow restaurants to have 25% capacity outside in the cold, bitter snow in the streets of New York. I'm thinking, I've been going to restaurants for a year. You walk in with your mask on, you sit at the table, you don't sit on top of something. In other words, personal responsibility. If I want to go out and risk my health, that's on me. It's not on Governor Cuomo or Governor Whitmer or Governor Newsom. One more clip before we take your phone calls and get your reaction to Naomi Wolf, because this is what it's going to take. Normal Americans on all sides of the political spectrum have got to start standing up against these bullies and these tyrants and these doggone dictators. Here was Naomi Wolf, one more clip on Fox News with Tucker last night.
And when you look back, March of 2020, a lot of things started to move that kind of locked into place a set of policies that are kind of 360-degree, full-on totalitarian policies. So I think a lot of us are kind of in culture shock. Luckily or unluckily, I've been studying closing democracies for 12 years. So I recognized early on, once I realized New York State had emergency powers, I know from history that no one gives up emergency powers willingly. They always drag it on and drag it on. And so every month I'm getting in my email an announcement that Governor Cuomo is extending emergency measures. only from studying history do I know how predictable it is when you start to have elected officials say, we are not going to follow the Constitution because there's a pandemic. And I just want to say lastly, and then I promise I'll stop, nowhere in the Constitution does it say all this can be suspended if there's a bad disease.
I never thought I'd ever cheer from my couch for a liberal feminist in my life.